There are certain questions that remain at the edges of history, not because they lack importance, but because they disturb what has long been accepted. And one such question concerns the life of Jesus Christ in a way that is rarely explored with seriousness. The narrative that is commonly known presents a clear beginning and a defined ministry, yet there are long stretches of his life that remain undocumented, particularly the years between his early life and the beginning of his public teachings, and it is within this silence that a deeper inquiry begins to take shape. Recent scientific attention towards the Shroud of Turin, including research associated with the University of Padova, has brought forward findings that suggest the presence of genetic traces and material connections extending towards regions of the Indian subcontinent. And while this does not establish a direct journey, it challenges the assumption that the story remained confined within a limited geography. At the same time, there exists a far more direct and far more controversial claim, which has persisted for decades and continues to invite attention despite resistance. In Srinagar, in Kashmir, there is a site known as the Roza Bal shrine, which has long been associated with a figure called Uz Asaf, and according to certain interpretations, this figure is believed to be Jesus himself, who is said to have survived the crucifixion and later traveled east, eventually living and dying in India. This idea has been explored by individuals such as Mirza Ghulam Ahmad and later examined by authors like Holger Kersten, who attempted to bring together historical references, textual interpretations, and cultural observations in support of this narrative. Mainstream historical scholarship does not accept this identification and considers it speculative. Yet, the persistence of this claim raises a question that cannot be dismissed easily, because ideas that hold no resonance tend to fade, while those that continue to appear often point towards something that invites deeper examination. To understand why this idea continues to hold attention, it becomes necessary to move beyond physical claims and enter the realm of teaching, because the essence of a spiritual figure is not limited to where he lived, but is expressed through what he understood and conveyed. When one examines the teachings attributed to Jesus, a consistent movement becomes visible where the emphasis repeatedly turns inward, directing attention towards an inner transformation rather than an external structure of belief. The statement that the kingdom of God is within does not describe a distant reality, but points towards an immediacy that must be realized within one's own being, and this orientation aligns closely with the philosophical vision found in the Upanishads, where the ultimate reality is not separate from the self, but is to be discovered as one's own essence. This is not a superficial similarity of language, but a deeper convergence in the way truth is approached, where authority shifts from external validation to direct realization, and where the journey is not towards accumulation, but towards understanding. Similarly, the emphasis on compassion, detachment, and freedom from ego that appears in the teachings of Jesus finds strong resonance within traditions such as Buddhism, where the focus is placed on insight, awareness, and liberation from the illusions created by the mind. When these parallels are observed carefully, they do not appear accidental, and they raise a question that becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. Is this alignment the result of independent discovery, or does it reflect a deeper interaction that has not been fully recorded in conventional history? Some narratives suggest that Jesus may have traveled east during the years that remain undocumented, encountering traditions that had already developed profound methods of inquiry into the nature of existence. And while these accounts are not accepted within mainstream scholarship, they continue to exist because they attempt to explain a connection that is experienced at the level of teaching. The presence of the Kashmir narrative extends this possibility further, where the question is no longer limited to influence, but to physical presence. And whether or not this claim is ultimately verified, it serves to challenge the boundaries within which history is often confined. At the same time, it is important to remain grounded, because without careful inquiry, Such ideas can easily become beliefs that replace one assumption with another, and the value of this exploration lies not in accepting or rejecting prematurely, but in examining with clarity. What emerges from this inquiry is not a conclusion, but a shift in perspective, where the story of Jesus is no longer seen as isolated within a single tradition, but as part of a larger movement of understanding that may have expressed itself across different regions and cultures. The recent scientific findings, the enduring narratives, and the philosophical resonance together create a field of inquiry that cannot be dismissed easily, because they point towards a possibility that history, as it is commonly understood, may not be complete. And perhaps this is where the real significance lies, because it invites a different kind of attention, one that is not driven by belief or denial, but by a willingness to look beyond what has been accepted and explore what remains open. Because when a question continues to return across time, it does so not to disturb unnecessarily, but to indicate that something within it has not yet been fully understood. And whether one chooses to engage with it or not, the question itself remains, waiting to be explored with depth and clarity.